So yeah, just started recording. So yeah, welcome everyone to this next AMA for 100 Days of No Code, and we've got the automation king himself in Michael Gill. Yeah, I see a lot of bowing going on here. So yeah, it's real like privilege and honor to have sort of a no code OG with us today, which is amazing. But it would be great to kick off with an intro about yourself, Michael. I'm sure everyone knows what you do and what you get up to, but in case they don't, it would be great to hear sort of your backstory and how you got into no code and then some of the projects you've been working on. So if you could kick off with that, that would be amazing before we open it up for questions.
Sure, absolutely. So I started out my career as a developer, actually, and I was doing some like freelance work and actually worked at an ad agency in Los Angeles. And at the ad agency, we did everything. So I got to learn all kinds of stuff there. I learned graphic design, video editing, print design, web development, all of that. And so that really kind of set my course for wanting to start my own agency. And I had like this 5-year plan. And then I got laid off 6 months after I got the job. So it kind of accelerated my plans. I had no clue what to do, but my wife was super supportive. And she said, you know, we always said we wanted to start our own agency, so let's just do it. So did mostly web and software development and some 3D animation for about 10 years. And then I've talked about this a little bit on Twitter, but I hit a point where I was completely burnt out. If any of you have run your own agency, you know what that's like. Or if you've been a freelancer, it's the same thing. And so hit a period of burnout and didn't know what I wanted to do, but I took a couple of roles as a CTO. And that's what I do today. I'm a CTO for a company here in Atlanta. But right around the end of last year, I found the no-code space. I think it was a Google search that led me to Bram's no-code MVP, and it completely like rocked my world. It completely changed my whole perspective on what I was doing and how I was doing it. I mentioned burning out. I had come off of spending like 2 years building a SaaS software platform that I was so excited about. Got a little bit of traction out the gate, had some MRR, not a lot, but I think it was like, you know, $2,000-3,000 a month. And I was like, oh my God, it's happening. I can do this. And it didn't pan out. And so after spending 2 years on that, I was just like, this is insanity. And when I found Bram's no code MVP course, I realized like there's another way to do it. And I was approaching it completely wrong because I was approaching it from a developer standpoint. And I had to put like my maker hat on and just look at what's the quickest way to get something in front of a customer and validate if it's legitimate or not. And so that's how I got into no code. So it was right at the end of last year. And I launched No Code Coffee the beginning of February because I was just like completely in the no code space, like day and night, just reading everything I could, following everybody I could find, and was just so excited that I realized how big the space was, and I wanted to start a newsletter just to catalog how many no code tools and makers and products there were out there. And I'd never launched anything on Product Hunt before, so that was my first Product Hunt launch, and it actually went number 2 behind a coronavirus tracking app. This was the beginning of February, so I didn't even really know what coronavirus was at that time. I was still pretty ignorant, but little did I know that was going to change the world. But anyway, so when I got some traction with that, I realized like, okay, this no code space is just, it's on its way to the moon. And I still feel like we're in the early stages of it. So I'm excited. I've got a couple of no code projects that I'm working on with people you guys probably know from Twitter. I'm working on a newsletter referral system with Jens Lennartson. I'm working on Kuppa with KP, which is a virtual online hangout. We call it an online coffee shop. But working on that, and I wrote an ebook, Maker Minions, which is about automation ideas and ways that you can automate your business. And yeah, that's kind of a long-winded intro.
No, it's great. That's really great. Yeah, it's good to hear it again and sort of pick up because you only really started pretty recently, and it's sort of crazy what you've done in that time. So I think it's good to like hear that again, so people aren't like, oh, he's been doing this for 5 years and he's some sort of, he's had all this like runway to do it in. So it's sort of inspiring in that sense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say any of you who are in 100 days of no code, you are all part of the early crowd. The people that I talk to that have been in this the longest, they still all joined like at the end of last year. I mean, we're talking 6, 7 months ago. This thing is so early, it's going to be amazing.
Cool. Well, on that note, I guess we'll get out of the gates pretty quickly and so open it up for questions. I guess similar to last week, I think most of you were here last week, but if you have a question, just sort of raise your hand raise your hand sort of physically or actually like on Zoom, and I'll come to you and then you can fire away.
I have a question, Michael. Firstly, thank you for being here and everything. I've been following for a long time. I'm surprised that you haven't been going longer because, say, I started quite a while ago with Makeup Pad, and then I've done 100 days, and you've always been around. So I'm surprised how much you've done in so little time, really. So the question is, because I used to get the no code coffee, and the amount of content that you used to get into that every day is a lot of work, and I know that you automated a lot of it, but how do you prioritize your time? How do you get so much done in the same 24 hours as I have?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, I'll be completely honest. I struggle with it like everybody else, or at least I hope everybody else struggles with it, and I'm not the only one. But it's really tough, and I've been talking about this a little bit on Twitter lately, and I'm hoping later this year to come out with some content around like the creative process and how I think about it and how I go through it. But productivity is that's a tough one. The way that I've found success is I have to just kind of learn my productive times of day, my productive streaks, whatever it is when I'm inspired, and then I just have to throw everything behind that. And I have like these short bursts of creativity where I'm able to do something amazing, but I've noticed that it's a short window. One of my I would say weaknesses is sticking with something for any length of time. And that's why no code suits me so well, is because you can do something in such a short amount of time. So for me, it's learning your patterns, learning when you're creative, and then just throwing everything behind that. And that means dropping some things, means saying no to some projects. It means disappointing some people sometimes when you thought you were going to get to something, but you couldn't get it out. So it's not a exact science. It's definitely an art.
Yeah, that's good to know. I mean, I have the same things where I'm coming to the same conclusions where sometimes you're just not motivated and you have to write that time off, and then when you are inspired, you go full on. So, yeah, no,
Yes.
it's good to know you suffer the same problems. So thanks.
Oh yes, absolutely.
I think Dan had a question. I think everyone has a question, but I saw Dan first, so go for it.
Me, Dan? Excellent. Because I'm the only Dan on this call this time. Hey man, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Yeah man, good. Just loads of questions in general, but one of them is, I guess, what's the most interesting tool that you've kind of found in your journey? And then also, what's your favorite automation?
That's a tough one. Okay, so most interesting tool. I'm a little biased, but I'm going to have to go with Clutch. It's not a super popular tool, but you guys may have heard of it. I think it's like at Clutch Creator on Twitter. But Clutch is a no-code tool, but it like generates code on the back end and spits it out. And I've actually implemented that in my business here in Atlanta, and so it's just kind of top of mind for me right now. It's to me, it represents like the far end of what no code can do. It's pretty complex. It's not like a, super easy right out of the gate tool, but it blows my mind that no code tools can do this kind of thing now. So I'll probably pick that one just because it's at the front of my brain right now. And then as far as favorite automation, you mean just one that I've seen or one that I've done myself?
I think it's one that you've done yourself, which I guess is the one that's probably freed up the most amount of time or given you the most amount of value.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good one. So it's hard to pick just one.
Tell us all of them, man. Tell us all of them.
It's like picking your favorite kids. But I would say in general, I have a theme of having my automations be built around like reporting out data to me, like doing some kind of analysis to give me insight into what's going on and then reporting that out to me. And you guys know, if you work a day job and then do the maker stuff on the side or whatever, like your notifications are going off all day. It's hard to keep track of emails and Twitter DMs and Slack messages or whatever. So I like to pick one place to centralize all my messages, and for me that's Slack. So I use Slack as like almost like an automation dashboard, although I am building a new dashboard, but that's another topic. But I use it like an automation dashboard. So every automation that I have run sends me a message in Slack, like when it runs, or it will put a message in Slack when it runs, but it will actually like alert me or notify me if there's something I need to act on, even down to like my email. I get very distracted if I'm checking my email all day and seeing an email pop up. Guaranteed I'm gonna like go, focus on it when maybe I shouldn't. And so I don't have discipline. I know some people have discipline around like they only check email a couple times a day. I'm just not that disciplined. So instead I just keep my email shut, and I have an automation that will occasionally send me like a super brief summary that just says like, these people sent you, 2 emails or whatever. And so like if my CEO sends me, an email, that's something I'll probably want to click on. But if it's others, I can wait until I'm done with what I'm working on. So I love that kind of automation. It helps me stay focused.
Great questions, Dan. Cool. I'll come to Look just because I'm conscious you're going to have to leave a little bit early, and I know you always have a stream of questions. So yeah, fire away.
Yeah, I sure do, but the rest get their shot as well on Michael. I'm wondering, just like a very simple question, actually, what makes you excited about no code?
That's a good question. I think what makes me most excited about no code is it's another tool that I can use. I said before, like I had this almost identity crisis when I first found no code because I'm a developer. Like I shouldn't need no code tools. If I talk to any of my developer friends, they're like, why are you doing that? That makes no sense. And so I had this like whole identity crisis originally. And when I sat down and really looked at it and thought about it, I realized that I only ever got into coding because it was a way to build stuff that I wanted to build. Even as a kid, like I always just used what I would build everything in Legos or construction paper, cardboard, whatever I could find to build something, I would do that. And so that's all code ever was to me. And I feel like with no code, I've now found a more powerful version of that. I don't know how to describe it better than that, but it's like, to me, it is so much more valuable than being able to code. It's insane. It's really insane.
Yeah, well, to speak of potential, I'm a developer myself as well, so
nice.
I definitely recognize the potential too, and I have
awesome.
Many developers, fist bump, virtual fist bump. I've had many developers just look at me just confused and ask me why I would even focus on such a thing, but
yeah.
I feel like they fail to see the potential and simply the speed that no code allows us to develop in.
Yeah.
And so, capitalizing on the potential, what tool specifically do you think has great potential? I know you just mentioned Clutch, but obviously you must have other tools with like Builder, for example. I think everyone agrees has great potential.
Yeah.
Are there any other tools?
Yeah, if there, I mean, if there was the ability to like, invest, if there was like a stock market for no code tools, I would put my money into Builder. I think it has the most potential. And I'm a little biased. I've met with Mark. I've got to sit down with him a few times. He came here to Atlanta. I just really enjoy him as a person, and his vision for Builder, and even his story on how he got to Builder is just so amazing. Like to me, Builder is that no code unicorn. I think they're going to be out of here. But then the other crazy thing is the no code space is growing and moving so fast that, the tool that will probably like win the whole game probably hasn't even been built yet. Like it's probably sitting in somebody's Notion doc, and tomorrow they'll start on it and next week we'll hear about it. Like it's just that crazy.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. I'll come to Cara, if that's all right. I saw you had a question.
Hi. Yes, I actually have a lot, so I'll just stick with a couple and let other people have a turn. Hi, Michael. I follow you on Twitter, and it's so cool to see that you're a real life person. So this is exciting.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
He's not a full automation.
No, maybe not yet, at least. First question is, like, as I'm seeing a lot of people build a lot of things, which is super exciting, like, and maybe they're like working on the same thing over time, or like building a lot of different things, like just how do you keep up with everything that you've built? Or do you just kind of like build it for fun and then just kind of move on? Or like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So I keep my ideas like organized in Notion. That's kind of my go-to organization doc. Before that, it was a bunch of notebooks that I was using. But I also, there's this really good notebook called Hatch, like, like a egg that hatches. So it's called the Hatch notebook. I recommend it for anybody who's like a maker. It's a really good way to list out all your ideas and then start to like cultivate them towards which ones should I work on and which ones shouldn't I. There's some really cool like templates and processes to follow in there on deciding how you should work on projects. And then also because I mentioned I got into this from Bram's course, No Code MVP, some of the processes he has in there are really helpful for deciding what you should work on and what you shouldn't. And that's kind of for like out of the gate. On a day-to-day basis, it's more around where I feel like I can get something out today. Oftentimes it's tough, and you get to the end of the day and feel like you didn't do anything, even though you probably did a lot. And so I try to focus on what's one thing I can get shipped today, get it out the door. It can be something small, but at least get something out. And I find that if I could do that like before, lunchtime, then it's going to be a good day. Like even if I struggle in the afternoon to do anything, at least I got something out in the morning. But sometimes it also triggers that productivity. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, that's very helpful. And then one other question. I kind of feel like everybody has a newsletter now. So I'm just curious if you have like top ones that have been really helpful or inspiring to you that you think we should know about.
That's a good question. I feel the same way. There's so many newsletters coming out all the time. It is really tough to keep up with them all. I have to admit, I actually don't read very many newsletters at all. There's someone on Twitter, I think it's Steve, Stephen, who's working on a curated list of all the best. Oh no, I'm sorry. He's going to kill me. It's KP. KP is working. Steve's working on the curated list of Twitter threads. That's what I was thinking of. KP is working on a app for curating the best newsletters, and I'm excited about that because I think that's one that will give me an ability to kind of focus on, which newsletters would be best for me, because I'm pretty pretty bad at it. But that being said, I like the MakerPad newsletter. I like JT's No Code Founders newsletter. There's another one called Startup Resources that's really helpful, and I'm blanking on the name of the guy who created it, but Startup Resources is really good as well. Yeah, those are the 3 that come to mind.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite, yeah, it's a good question. That it's a struggle to cut through the noise on that
It
front.
is.
So much noise. So it's good to
Yeah.
always good to get some recommendations for sure. Cool. I'm going to come to Mark just because he was so excitable at the beginning. So yeah, I'm sure you've got lots of questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I see you say you're a developer. How much of that sort of bleeds into your no-code projects? Because I think everyone will agree that no-code is a little bit misleading because you know, there's always some element of, you know, a little bit wider than just a sort of a drag and drop situation when when you're building something. But how useful do you find that? And when you were developing, and I suppose you still do some stuff now with code, but what language did you specialize in? And are you still including that in what you do?
Sure. So I'll answer the second question first, I guess. So for the most of my career as a developer, I worked in what's called the LAMP stack. So primarily PHP, MySQL for the database, Linux servers. That was kind of my bread and butter. And then as things changed, you know, I really migrated to more of a microservices architecture, a lot of JavaScript, front end and back end. Node and React are probably 2 names that you've heard. And so heavy JavaScript is the answer for currently. And that does, you know, translate over to a lot of no-code platforms because most of them give you the ability to insert some kind of custom code. And so JavaScript is a very easy way to kind of hack some of the no-code platforms if you want to add some custom code. So I still do that occasionally, certainly not on every project. And I actually like when I'm working, you know, on a no-code project, I actually like to forget, you know, the developer side or forget that I can even, you know, add code because I feel like it's a bit of a crutch. It's a little too easy to just flip over and insert some custom code. I like to really use what the tools provide. So I try not to do that too often.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, I totally understand that. You know, you want to focus on the thing. I suppose you avoid some sort of future technical debt with that if you're sticking to the rails that are given to you by the tools. And yeah, I just sort of think that it doesn't do any harm to have some experience with a bit of JavaScript or CSS, and you know, just to sort of allow you to get some understanding of how things work. And yeah, I'm pleased to you know you've sort of been able to run so successfully with stuff like Kuppa, you know, without that, you know, without the code so much. But that's great.
Yeah, and to your point, it definitely doesn't
quick here. Michael, thank you very much, and the rest as well. I'm gonna have to leave, but
okay.
Maybe I'll check in later if you guys are still going. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. By the way, if you guys could, or maybe you already did, but if you could drop your Twitter handles in the chat, that way I can check you guys out on Twitter. So a couple of you I follow already, but if we haven't met yet, if you don't mind dropping your Twitter handle in, so I could, and I'll drop mine.
Massive rush of Twitter handles.
I'll put mine in there as well. But yeah, Mark, I agree. I think that it definitely doesn't hurt to, you know, pick up a little bit of CSS or HTML. And probably the easiest way to do that is if you check out any of the tools that let you flip over and like see the code that was created by what you've done. It's a good way to learn. So I think of something like DraftBit. If you haven't checked out DraftBit, I think they're still in beta, but you know, it's for creating mobile apps, and you can you know, put your layout together, and then you can flip over and see the code that it generates. It's a good way to learn.
I did get an invite to the beta of draft bit there, and I had a poke around, but yeah, it wasn't for me. I sort of, it still needs some more polishing for it to be sort of something that I could get stuck into. But it's definitely on the right track in terms of being able to connect a data source that you want to the front end, and you could definitely see they're on the right lines with the logic they were using. And yeah, I think like you said, it's refreshing to know that you're in terms of, you know, careers, you're relatively new to this sort of this way of working, just like everybody else is, and you've managed to do so much so far. And of course, it being in that early stage, then tools are only going to be improving and become more capable, and everybody should be able to exploit that to make some great stuff. You know, it's almost unimaginable what the possibilities are when you sort of think about what could lie ahead. So
yeah, absolutely.
Long may you continue, and I'll keep on following what you do, and yeah, you know, hopefully some crumbs will fall by the wayside, and you know, we'll be able to, you know, get some success too.
Yeah, definitely. I have to say too, it's amazing to see just how far no code has come already. I think of something like Bubble. I actually looked at Bubble a few years ago for some like side project that I was working on. And again, I do think in some ways being a developer can be a handicap, but I couldn't figure it out. And I think it's come a long way since then. And I think the same applies to a lot of no-code tools. So I can't imagine where we'll be next year at this time.
Awesome. Cool. I'll come to Lakshmi. Is it? Yeah. Next, if that's all right. Sorry, I feel like I've pronounced that wrong. But yeah, please, yeah, fire away.
Sure. Firstly, thanks a lot for organizing this, Max. And you know, Michael, huge fan. I've been following Maker Minions and your Integrate project as well. So humongous project actually compiled. So thanks a lot. That's been helping out a lot.
Thank you.
So I actually had just one question, you know, that I got after going through your Maker Minions ebook. What is the most complex workflow that you have built using no code, and what made you do that in the first place?
So I think the most complex one I built so far was for Kuppa, and we actually moved away from that. We simplified it because it was too complex. But the very first version of Kuppa, we had all of this randomness built into how you were matched, and we were doing all kinds of things with Zoom and Google Calendar and Bubble and Integromat, and I don't even remember what else, but we like threw all of our ideas for Kuppa into an automation, and it was just a little too complex. It broke, you know, a couple too many times. And as the product evolved, we simplified it as well. But that was probably the biggest one, the most complex one that I built.
Care to share how big it was? I mean, how many stages or steps it was?
It was, I don't remember. I would say, I don't know, maybe 70, 80 steps or something like that.
Okay.
It was a lot, but I don't know. I've heard some people have built some crazy complex stuff in Zapier. I think Andrew Davison has built some pretty insane stuff in Zapier, and Jeremy Redmond too told me he has a 100-step Zap. I would love to see it. I haven't seen it yet, but he said he has a 100-step Zap. Yeah. He actually had to reach out to Zapier and have them like allow him to build more because he hit the 100 limit and he was trying to go to like 110 or something. So they had to increase his limit, and then they told him at a certain point the UI just stops working. So they told him not to go too much further than that. But I'd love to see that someday.
I think I'm gonna reach out to him.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, great question. Before I go back to people that have sort of already asked a question, I'm just conscious if John or Clement have any questions. Otherwise, I'll shoot to Dan. He's got his hand up. Cool. Okay. Well, let's go with Dan. What have you got?
Cool. So how do you decide what product or project to work on? I guess as a no coder, definitely a maker, sometimes maker, sometimes coder. There are lots of things that you could be working on, and especially with the tools that are available, there are so many interesting things to explore. But you seem to have made some prolific things, and how do you decide like what to actually put your effort behind?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I put heavy consideration into is leverage, and specifically leveraging things that I've done before. And so if there's, 5 things that I want to work on, but for one of them, I know that, things I've already done for Maker Minions or No Code Coffee or whatever will translate into that, or give me a head start on it, I'm going to pick that one because I'm trying to make sure I, progress throughout the year, really, because I know that I have a tendency to just run to whatever new idea I have. And I'm afraid that I'll, get stretched too thin in wanting to do 20 things and not, progressing. And so I want to make sure I progress. So I try to build on something that I've done before and try to focus where I know I can leverage, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good question. Cool. Well, I guess we're sort of hitting the second. Well, I don't want to say second wave. That's not a good. It's not a good expression. But yeah, Mark, it looks like you've got another question.
Yeah, thank you. What's I'd just like to know how you're feeling Kuppa's going and what's next for it. Are you continuing with some growth? Are you going to make some money off it? Are you sort of going to exploit the users you've got with some sort of other idea? Where are you able to sort of give us a steer on what you're doing with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of at a inflection point with Kuppa, where we've got a crazy excited user base that just loves Kuppa. They use it, often. I've seen some of you guys on there, and we hit a point just recently where we see people on Twitter saying, "I just had a Kuppa with so and so," and we don't know either person. So it's past that point where it's people that I knew or people that KP knew that were coming into Kuppa, and it's sort of starting to take off, and it's incredibly scary because we feel like, okay, well, I really hope that person enjoyed their experience, but we had no ability to preface it for them or introduce it to them or any of that. So we've kind of halted on temporarily. We've halted on letting people off the wait list and into Kuppa, and we're intentionally doing a lot of gathering of data and analytics right now. We're working with Adam Soresco to do some crazy cohort analysis and really looking at our users' activity in Kuppa and trying to understand the points at which the product is clicking for them and the points at which they're not. And once we have that data and that analysis done, then we'll get back to putting out new features and all of that. But I can tell you that our next push is going to be around more of the community side of Kuppa, better understanding who is in Kuppa, who's using it, who's available, who would be a good match for you to have a Kuppa with, who on Twitter that's having Kuppas with other people, adding some context for Kuppa users, and really trying to build that online coffee shop vibe. That's going to be our key focus.
Are you still looking to maintain the randomness? Where there's the total unknown at the minute, which I've met some great people I wouldn't have met otherwise, and I think it's a great start. I've also I've also I've been stood up as well though. So there's obviously there's sort of some things that obviously need ironing out. But I think that randomness there, with obviously there's the categories. So you pick the category to sort of to speak to. But I think that randomness is one of the key features of it. Are you gonna still maintain that feature?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we feel like the serendipity of meeting somebody who you had no clue who they were, but then you just clicked in a Kuppa, that is, that's like magic. So we will definitely try to maintain that as much as possible. And there's a couple ways, we can do that. One of the things though that works against that is, as you said, we've had people that are stood up, and that is like the worst experience in Kuppa, is getting stood up. And we feel terrible about it. And so we're looking at ways to control that, because it just makes it a bad product. So there's a few things that we'll be doing, but as I talked about adding that community feature, being able to understand, who's had Kuppas, how good their attendance is to them, those kinds of things, like being able to see and know ahead of time, I guess the quality of your Kuppa. You may not know the person, but at least if you know that you have confidence that it's going to be a high quality match, then I think the randomness is going to be good. I do think at some point we'll give people the option, if they don't want to do random, they can pick a different path. But for those that like the random, we're going to try and build some confidence that it's at least going to be high quality.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. When was the launch of that? It feels like pretty recently still.
Yeah. So KP actually launched the first version before I was involved.
Okay.
I want to say it was March or somewhere like that. March or April, maybe.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. Sort of the traction it's got in that time. I feel like my Twitter feed is just full of people holding up their mugs, so which is good. It's nice. But it's obviously doing well. So big congrats on that. But I'll come to Cara again for a question.
Yeah. I have a real question, but as we were talking about that, I want to shamelessly ask if I can get into Kuppa, or when you reopen it, if I can maybe come up a little bit on the list.
Yes. No, you
cool.
can. So right now we are letting people in ad hoc if they DM us. So I saw you sent your Twitter handle, and so I will get you in after this.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Absolutely.
Something I've been thinking a lot about, and I'm so curious your perspective on this, is the idea of consulting in this area and how to price your services. I'll say mine, for myself particularly, part of the beauty of no code is we can build things in a much shorter period of time, and sometimes a lot more effectively, not just efficiently. And so when I think about if I were to build out something for somebody, and I can do a lot of that strategy, I can do the design, and now I can build it for you too. That's value in and of itself, but I don't think it's ethical to charge the same amount that it would for a month-long project for something that can be done in a couple days or a week's time. But there is still inherent value in shrinking that, right? And bringing all those skills to the table. So I'm just curious, your thoughts on that, your approach to that.
Yeah, so I would say my advice to anybody in the no-code space, whether you're doing it, freelance, building stuff for people, consulting, as you said, do not discount your rates because it's no-code. And I learned this the hard way, not just in no-code, but I learned it all throughout my career with my agency that I had. I promise you it is not good in the long run. It may be good in the short run, but not in the long run. You have to price based off of value, price based on what it's worth, not based off of your time or how much you put into it or how much, how much the resources cost you. And if you approach it that way and you price it based off of value, then you have the leverage when you need it to say, okay, for this one case I'm going to give a discount, or for this one case I'm going to, you know, do it as a, you know, a much cheaper rate as a favor or whatever, but leave that as your leverage. Set your rates at the same as anybody else who is offering the same product that you're offering, the same end product, right? That is the biggest advice I can give you. And you know, it's worth what it's worth. It doesn't matter the tools that you're using. I learned that in the development world. You know, if you ever had that difficult client that just wants it for as cheap as they can get it, and then they find out, you know, that you're outsourcing, or you got a junior developer to work on it or whatever, they immediately want that cheaper rate. And it's like, you're paying for a website or an app or whatever. Like, it's either worth it to you or it's not. You know, show me what the raw materials cost, and then, you know, anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, but price it for what it's worth, not based on your time.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Do you know of like any resources to like sanity check some of those prices, to be like, hey, you know, I know what value you're looking for, I know what is fair to me for my time, but like, am I giving you an estimate that is like so absurd, like no one would ever say that number?
Right. Yeah, that's something, I mean, I've definitely lived through that in my career. And anytime somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want you to build this, you're like, I have no clue what to price this at all. And so I struggled through that most of my time, and I still do, you know, at certain times to these days. But what I try to do as a sanity check is just find other people that are offering a similar service or product and see what they're charging. It doesn't mean you have to go with what they're charging, doesn't mean you can't charge more, but it's at least a sanity check, so you can, you know, feel like you're in the ballpark. And you'll see there's a wide range usually. In most things, there are going to be people that are, you know, offering it for really low, and there'll be others that are offering it for really high. And then it's more about, you know, what you feel comfortable with. You don't want to be stressing every time you go into, you know, a pitch and you're giving them a price that you're like, oh my God, they're going to say no. You know, just whatever rate you can be confident at, maybe is the best way to say it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, great question. I've just seen Daniel come in. Good to see you.
Hey, Daniel.
Yeah, any questions for Michael? I know it's probably pretty late. Oh, just seeing your question. Yeah, maybe happy just for you to come off mute and fire away.
I'm good. It's only 3:48 a.m., so it's good.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. Did you these? Sorry, I'm just reading the questions. Does it go through? Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I'm just trying to catch up. Cool. That's really helpful. Thanks, Dan. Yeah. Okay. Lakshmi. Looks like you've got a question. Go for it.
No, Max. I actually fired away the one question I had, and then Dan and Kara actually asked some of the other questions I had, so I already got those answered. Good
stuff. I may just quickly come in. I've got a question I'm itching to ask. It's more just around, because I'm aware that 100 Days of No Code community is essentially a gateway for people starting out in no code. And I know one of the from reading one of your sort of threads on Twitter a little while back, you recommended having a dip in lots of different tools and not just staying in one. I'd be really interested to know how you should approach learning or starting out in each no-code tool, and to get up to scratch or get up to speed in the quickest possible way. That would be really good to know.
Yeah, so I think hopefully I understood the question right, but a good way that I like to approach it, or encourage other people to approach it, is have a bunch of tools bookmarked that you're interested in, and then check out their showcase page, and some don't have them, which is one thing that I would like to see improve, for more of these tools to build their showcase pages. Some of them are so new that they don't have enough to showcase yet, but take a look at their showcase page and see what other people have built. And then, when you start on your next project, find something that's close to what you want to build, at least in structure, and then give a new tool a try. Don't have to do that on every project, but every second or third, fourth, fifth project, every few projects, try out a new tool, and you may find a new one that you like better than what you're using.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, that's a really good answer. And the second question I had was a bit following on from what Mark was talking about earlier, but like how how does your coding background influence your sort of no coding, and what limits have you been able to push that maybe people that don't have that coding experience can't? Would be really interesting to know.
Sure. So I would say that definitely as a developer, I was very like back-end focused, meaning you would build out the database first, and you would design the database, and then on top of that, you would build your application. So I'm still that way. So pretty much I start every project with an Airtable. Even if I'm not going to end up using Airtable as the database, it's just, for me, it works to design and structure my idea that way. So I kind of just build out, like for Kuppa, for example, I would create an Airtable that has, a table of users, and then a table of matches or meetings, and then a table of their preferences, and just start kind of designing it that way. And I think that comes from my developer background, although that's not required. I know a lot of people that build that way as well that aren't developers. So it definitely influences it that way. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Sure. So it's around like how, to what extent does coding having that,
So yeah, there are definitely ways that I can sort of hack or leverage my coding background. One of them, since I talk a lot about automation and I spend a lot of time using automation, is when there isn't a native integration provided between two tools, or there's two apps that you're using that you want to connect, and Zapier doesn't have an integration, you go to Integromat, they don't have an integration. Being able to create your own API integration is huge. You can, cross, canyons with that. It's really quite of a hack. And so I've seen some tools. There's actually 2 no-code tools that I've bookmarked on creating your own APIs. I haven't been through them yet enough to understand if it solves this problem for non-developers. And so I'm excited to do that. And once I do, if it does seem to solve the problem for non-developers, I will definitely be talking about that and promoting it on Twitter, because I think that is a hack. And then the other one, you don't have to be a developer to do, but understanding and leveraging webhooks is big. So if you're working in Zapier or Integromat, in most cases, you're limited on the number of times you can run a automation, or you could be limited in the frequency. Like you can only run them every 5 minutes or whatever. And understanding and being able to connect webhooks is huge, because you can trigger an event at the moment that it happens, and you're not wasting automation credits by trying to check every minute or check every 5 minutes. It's really a big hack as well, and it doesn't seem to be talked about too much, but yeah, webhooks are awesome.
Thanks so much. Yeah, that was great. Cool. He's
back.
Awesome. Well, I'm aware that we're approaching the hour, so if anyone has any last minute questions, come off your mute and just fire away.
I would like to take this opportunity to just say I've got to leave, but I do appreciate the time you've given us, Michael. I appreciate you organising, Max, and yeah, it's been fabulous. And I will watch the recording after I leave and when it's up. But I do appreciate it. Thank you very much, and keep going. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, so I do have a question. Please interrupt me if the question's already been asked in 20 minutes or so that I've left. But I wonder, Michael, what are some of the opportunities within the no-code space that you can see right now, but no one is capitalizing on?
I love this question. So yes, I think that the no-code space is really good at giving makers the tools that they need to build stuff, and that is fantastic. I think the next opportunity is helping makers understand how and why to build certain things into their products, right? Because it's kind of like, right now it's an open playing field. You could do anything. You go into these tools, they've got a panel with 100 different things for you to choose from. And I think that I would love to see more of a sort of customer lens put on some of these products, and helping you as a maker understand how to best serve your user. So things like, should I use a feed view here, or is it better for me to use a table layout, or should I route the user through a paywall at this point, or should I put the paywall further down the line, or should I provide interaction for users at this point? Just all that like user-focused product side guidance, I think, will be huge. And I think that's the sort of rocket booster that will allow all of these amazing indie makers to compete with the big, app development companies out there. Just a little bit of that product education. And I would love to see that be like the next space that we grow in.
Yeah, I think that you make a good point. And I feel like some of the tools aren't, well, in some sense, the no-code is still in its nascency, and you can definitely see that in some of the tools, and other tools have matured really well. Webflow being a good example, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's of course more and more people getting into the no-code education, myself being one of them, with the goal of starting a remote no-code curriculum. So I wonder, what do you think of for example, MakerPad, but also maybe you've heard of Seth Kramer's No-Code MBA, Bram Ganstein's No-Code MVP courses. Of course, there's a couple of different courses or boot camps or educational resources. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the no-code education space right now.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think MakerPad has, really been the the sort of lighthouse that has been, lighting a path for people who want to get into no-code education. I would also mention Joe Brown's New Code. There's a lot of really good no-code education spaces out there. I think that maybe in a similar way, there'll need to be some consulting or guidance on helping makers understand which paths from an education standpoint are good for them. And so if anybody is just super passionate about the no-code space, but doesn't really know yet where they fit, or, still figuring it out, you might actually be a good fit for that. It's like, so I see so many people that get into no-code and they're like, okay, how do I start? Where should I go? And everybody says, oh, check out MakerPad or go here or go there. And they're still just overwhelmed because there's so much great information out there. So I have a thought that I don't know if it'll become a product or not, but some kind of a product that lets makers understand what type of maker they are. Because I think we have a lot of similarities. There's certain things that make makers what they are, but then there's a lot of differences as well. So understand what type of maker you are and let that translate to what type of education resources would be best for you, what type of tools would be best for you, what type of marketing strategies are best for you to fit your personality to how you leverage no code. I think that would be killer. I'd love to create something like that, and I have no clue what it would be, but it's a thought that's still tumbling around in my head.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting one as well. Don't necessarily know many educational institutions that have leveraged the power of people, their personalities, and well, especially with your degree of automation and things, I could definitely see just having a great resource of many different no-code or other types of resources, and then being well, dividing those resources over the different types of personality. I think it's a very interesting idea. There's also this other, I'm not sure, maybe you were familiar with the coding bootcamp space in, well, America specifically, but worldwide. There have been many coding bootcamps over the years, and there have actually been, well, you could maybe even call them scandals, because the quality isn't very, there's no governance or assurance in coding bootcamp quality. And so they've started this CIRR, and I think I forget what the acronym stands for every time, but it's the Council on Integrity and Results and Reporting, to ensure that the coding boot camps will, well, assure their quality of their education. And I think this is something that the no-code space can definitely, they should embrace, because there's going to be many different no-code resources, and this is something I think is a great opportunity for no-code.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of that, but that sounds, yeah, really important, definitely, as the education sort of grows. But I am conscious of time, so yeah, we'll wrap up now. But thanks everyone for your amazing questions. I think that, yeah, really sort of plucks lots of different parts of Michael's brain there, which is really interesting to sort of get inside. And thanks, of course, Michael, for your time. It's been a real pleasure. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I'll say thanks for the opportunity, Max. I appreciate it. This has been fun. You guys all had great questions, and you all just are fun to chat with. So I'd love to do this again sometime. But I am gonna make sure I'm following you guys on Twitter, so I can stay tuned to what you've got going on. And yeah, I try to keep up on DMs, although I'm behind right now. But feel free to DM me on Twitter once we connect, and I'll try to be as helpful as I can.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And next week we've got Maturi from No Code Locals. I'm not even going to try that. But she's all about product and design, so which is a gap that we've sort of realised today. So yeah, that flows in quite nicely. So be sure to sort of sign up for that next week. Great to see you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you so much, Michael.
Yeah,
thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, guys.
All right, appreciate it. Later.